Okay, so first of all, thank you for coming to Talking Politics, organized by our club APSS. And first of all, let me start from introducing you. So Akbota Karibayeva, who is our guest now in Talking Politics, is currently pursuing her PhD in George Washington University, and now working at the Caspian Policy Center as a research fellow. Also, Akbota was a new alumni. She graduated from Nazarbayev University in 2018, and she has done quite a lot of work being a research assistant in various universities. So yeah, Akbota, let's start with the first question. Okay. We want to know more about your PhD at the George Washington.
Sorry to interrupt you for some reason.
Is it lagging? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Because
yes, I can. Am I lagging?
So I think something is off with the connection because I hear you or your voice as like the robot over like time.
Okay.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah, I can.
It would go well for like a couple of minutes and then it's gonna like.
Oh, got it. Yeah, our university Wi-Fi is really bad recently for some reason. How about now? Is connection getting better? How about now? Is it better?
No, so there is a lag between the video and voice, and then also there is lag within voice too.
Oh. Okay, let me try to connect to another Wi-Fi. Just one sec. I hope I won't be kicked out from the conference. One sec. Okay, so let me welcome Akbota, who is currently pursuing her PhD in political science at George Washington University. And she's currently also working at Caspian Policy Center as a research fellow. And Akbota is also a new alumni. She graduated from Nazarbayev University in 2018 and had done various research assistant jobs at plenty of universities. So today we're going to talk about current Central Asian politics, because Akbota is specializing in foreign policy in Central Asia mainly. Okay, so Akbota, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's start with your PhD at George Washington University, which is among the top universities in the US. Can you tell us what's your key focus in your PhD studies at George Washington?
Yeah, sure. So I'm broadly focused on authoritarianism. My current research interests include power successions, and that would be like patterns of transitions and regime continuity. Digital technologies, basically the state use of surveillance and cyber technologies, and ethnic regimes in nationalism in multi-ethnic contexts, with an area focus on the post-Soviet region and Central Asia more specifically. I'm also interested in geopolitics and foreign policy of small powers in multipolar neighborhoods. So yeah, hopefully I'll get to further explore these topics in my studies at GW.
Wow, excellent. I think a lot of students, political science students, and you are also interested in those particular topics because those are very related to Central Asia. And okay. Now, as an expert in the field of Central Asia, can you tell us the strategic importance of the Caspian region and mainly US Central Asian relations?
Yeah. So I will be using the Caspian region and Central Asia interchangeably, mostly because I'm personally more focused on Central Asia, but I've been exposed to um, to the the Caspian region more broadly throughout my work at the Caspian Policy Center. So yeah, just FYI, and I think that would be a perfect time for me to put a disclaimer that my views are only my own, and whatever I say doesn't represent any positions of the places I'm affiliated with. So strategic importance of the Caspian region. I mean, I won't go into the traditional framing of the Caspian region at the crossroads of East and West. Like, I think we all know and fairly well understand that part, and its importance for like the global trade and development. But through my previous work, I had a chance to better understand the policy angle of the US engagement in the region. So I will highlight a couple of aspects here. So first is security. I remember often starting my papers on Central Asia with a classic sandwich between Russia to the north, China to the east, and Iran to the south. But that pretty much summarizes the first and foremost reason why it has such an essential strategic importance for the US national interests. So this like triad or like triangle of foreign policy concerns will still have strategic importance and like concern for the US. And the current war in Ukraine and the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, and of course, like the rise of China that's been taking place over the past 30 years, well, 20 years, that will all continue to maintain, that will all continue to contribute to the importance of the region for the US, because it needs to nurture a reliable partnership with the region moving forward. Second, I think is the energy security, global energy security. For the past couple of weeks, we've once again were reminded of the dire need for Europe to diversify its energy suppliers. And the over-reliance on Russian fossil fuels gave Russia an immense leverage over the past years. So we kind of all knew that this would backfire one day, but it always takes a devastating crisis for states to act upon their stated intentions. And in that sense, I think the Caspian oil can provide that alternative that will fill the growing supply-demand gap while the world continues to gradually develop renewables. And with that, I also want to caution against perceiving the region exclusively through the prism of the great power competition or what they call the new great game, because the countries of the Caspian region have matured and grown into agentic actors, and they know what they want. They act strategically as well. And Kazakhstan's multilateralism could be an example of that, kind of trying to get the best out of the options on the table. I think another thing to keep in mind is that that countries of the region are often perceived as a single entity, like the Caspian region or the Central Asia and the South Caucasus, when in reality, there's so much diversity and heterogeneity across these countries in what they want, what they need, and what they can also offer or willing to offer to the international partners. And this diversity must be taken into account as the US develops its next national security strategy, or generally like implements the policy towards Central Asia and the South Caucasus.
Nice. Thank you for such a sophisticated explanation of the strategic importance of Central Asia. I think, yes, that's true that Central Asia cannot, as of now, cannot be framed as single entity, but should be looking from different perspectives of each country. And focusing closely on Kazakhstan, can you please comment on the strategic importance of US-Kazakhstan relations with a focus on the security and the economic side of it, especially taking into account current events?
Yep. I think Kazakhstan, in all these priority areas like security, energy, I guess economic development, Kazakhstan still remains the largest partner for the US in Central Asia, given its like relative size and capacity. But it's also a thing to remember is also what Kazakhstan can and is willing to offer to. So in the current war in Ukraine, for example, Kazakhstan has a unique position to talk to both sides. We know that the government has spoken against the war itself and the recognition of Lugansk and Donetsk as independent republics. But in all of this, Kazakhstan still has a stake in restoring peace and stability, given how much the economy has been affected already and will be affected should this continue for too long.
Thank you. And talking about the Caspian Security and Politics Program, as a part of this program, can you tell us how did the summit resolve the issue of the legal status of the Caspian Sea?
Well, I'm not that involved on the Caspian Sea matters anymore, but it was definitely a huge achievement for the region, and because it was needed for a long time, and finally it happened. But now, hopefully, the implementation will go and hopefully that this will not be affected too seriously by the current situation in the region in terms of because Russia is part of a signatory to the treaty, but I will defer on commenting any further on that, but I can definitely share a couple of resources that the Caspian Policy Center has been publishing on this. One of the latest ones that we put out was on the dropping sea levels of the Caspian Sea, and the cautioning against ignoring that, and recommending that countries take a look at that and take concerted action to ensure that the Caspian Sea remains at its levels and remains like a sustainable source of energy and in terms of like environmental security.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And by the way, congratulations on your recently published article in the Foreign Policy magazine. In spite of the January events, I know that probably all of us know that you have covered a topic that is hard and sensitive for each one of us. And could you please share your own view of the Qantar events, and more specifically, what are the long-term consequences of those tragic events for Calisthenic society?
Well, I think it's a very good and loaded question. A lot has been written and said on this. I think many details of who was involved, how, and why are still unclear. But I think the main takeaway point here is that the pre-existing course of socioeconomic development and the kind of closed political environment in Kazakhstan proved to be unsustainable and unstable in the long run. So systemic problems get absorbed by someone, by the population, and that creates grievances that accumulate over time. So, but also in the meantime, because the public doesn't get to express what the grievances are in the general public discourse, because it's so regulated, because there is no kind of or limited amount that the population can freely express, and in terms of their frustration and dissent. The government doesn't even realize the extent of these grievances oftentimes. I'm not saying it's like always the case, but I really hope that this was a wake-up call for the new administration, and that the recently proposed reforms will be genuinely implemented. I still have many reservations about the reforms rolled out 2 weeks ago, but that's a topic for another day, I think.
And also, we can observe that after the January events, a lot of people assumed that after this, Kazakhstani population will be more not willing to go to protests, because we hear a lot of news how even peaceful protesters were tortured and detained. However, current events show us that a lot of protests happened on the invasion of Ukraine, on feminist march, and etc. And it seems that government's response is rather less harsh compared to pre-existing protests before January events. How do you think, what you can say on the such mild government response on further protests, that protests are getting active? And even yesterday, they're going to be protests on social media regulations in Kazakhstan, in Astana, which seems quite a rare point that government is actually approving of such protests.
That's a great point. I think I'm very pleased to see that that civil society has been given this space to express their thoughts and to hold peaceful demonstrations. One thing that I'm gonna just put a caveat there, that we need to keep in mind that the government is still, according to the recent law on the peaceful assembly, that the government is still in charge of approving what demonstrations is being held, and the topics, in the like responsible parties, etc. And if they decline your application, then any peaceful demonstration would still be counted as a violation of that law. And in the recent speech, President Tokayev also mentioned that law too, and cautioned against any potential violations of that law, and mentioned that it will be enforced very strictly. I think there's something to think about. If the government adopts this tendency of like opening up the space to other more critical voices, so you mentioned the regulations on, was it on media freedom?
Yes, media freedom.
Yeah, on media freedom. So that's I think something new, but also, so all of the expression of opinion still is happening within the very managed political environment, and the government decides what is being put on the public discourse. So I am hopeful that this trend will continue to be like positive, that more and more topics will be brought to the public discourse. But we should still keep in mind that a lot of power and a lot of like last words, last say is given to the government, which I hope with time will be decreased.
And do you think that the January events somehow influenced such a behavior of government recently in regards to protests?
Yes, for sure. I think, as I said, the like closed political system, the closed political environment, what can be said, what people feel safe to say in public, that was very limited in the past decades. And but that doesn't mean that people don't have frustrations. It just means that there is no way of delivering that frustration, letting the government know that this is what's on our mind. This is what we're not satisfied with. So in that sense, it's like an informational asymmetry on the government side that needs to be filled somehow. So I think this is a very rational and right way to approach this, to liberalize the public space more, so that there is nothing like unexpected. If there are any huge frustrations with the regime or any of the like socio-political climate, the government will know through providing this safe space for the population to express their frustrations.
Yes, indeed. Before the January events, and there was a very limited communication channels for a public to discuss their grievances or any sort of dissatisfaction with the current socio and economic issues in Kazakhstan. I also think that it's a very probably good driving progress towards a more liberal, let's say, quote unquote, society in Kazakhstan. Now let's talk about the recent article in The Diplomat, where you discussed the problem of emigration from Kazakhstan in the light of the traumatic January events. What's your opinion on this issue in general? And will there be any immigration issues from Russia or Ukraine due to the current war?
Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right to suspect the migration question to become even more acute and more important for Kazakhstan in the coming months or years even, in light of the war in Ukraine. So in the Diplomat article that I wrote with Aruzhan Mirkhanova, who is an NU alumni as well, we analyzed how uncertainty about the uncertainty around or caused by the bloody January could incentivize greater out-migration of the domestic population of Kazakhstanis, as people most of all value and seek long-term stability. And one of the subsets of the out-migration population we thought would continue to be ethnic Russians. But I think the current situation in Russia will completely change that. Even now, we already see an influx of Russian immigrants overwhelming the rental housing market, potentially driving the prices up. We'll also see some impacts on the labor market too. It is still unclear what the average profile of migrant would be, but I suspect it would be high-skilled labor, which is not bad, which is probably good for the competitiveness of the Kazakhstani economy. But it will also increase competition for domestic workers. So I'm not like, I'm not sure what to expect, but something is definitely coming there. And of course, there's always been this nexus of frustrations over economic situation and employment and labor force, kind of state of the job market, let's say, and nexus between that and ethnic tensions. So again, I don't want to jump ahead of myself here, but we need to closely monitor the situation, and I hope that it will not be like that it will not end up being anything would not cause any conflicts, let's say.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we should also remember that Russia used to be a destination for labor migrants from other Central Asian countries. So these often seasonal migrants will have less incentive to go to Russia now now that the economy is contracting and the opportunities are closing up. And so they instead may consider Kazakhstan as their work destination. And of course, ethnic Kazakhs working in Russia will now have higher incentives to come back, to return to Kazakhstan or explore other options, say Europe or elsewhere. So yeah, it is still unclear in what way exactly migration will become an issue, but it will definitely be like a big agenda item to grapple with in the coming months.
Yes, also in the midst of a lot of countries around the world trying to be less dependent on Russia, what can you say about the investment and security opportunities for the Caspian region, and in particular for Kazakhstan, in regards to the war between Ukraine and Russia?
I think that too is a little bit too early to tell, and these are just my speculations. But on the one hand, foreign businesses that just pulled out of Russia are now likely to have interest in other countries in the region to still keep that market access. But on the other hand, it is still unclear how things will play out with the Eurasian Economic Union. Because, for example, Kazakhstan is a member, and there's now been some some chatter on excuse me, the recent policies to on Russian goods. Sorry,
It's okay.
that they need to be purchased in Russian rubles. So I don't know how, like, which ones of these policies would stick, but at the end of the day, many regional economies are still deeply connected to Russia. So Kazakhstan's currency dropped by 21% in value within the first 2 weeks of the Russian invasion. It's now at 15% compared to the pre-invasion rates, but it's already telling. And whether we like it or not, Kazakhstan's and the entire region's stability will be still inherently tied to that of Russia. Yeah.
And despite all the possibly positive predictions regarding the investment opportunities and the more emphasis on Kazakhstan in terms of labor market and migration, also we've noticed how a lot of amidst a lot of sanctions being imposed on Russian companies and Russian individuals, we want to see how does the war in Ukraine affect Kazakhstan's economy domestically and externally. And more specifically, probably the question should be, how will Kazakhstan be affected by the harsh sanctions imposed on Russia? Since we are very interconnected?
I think so. The things that we've already mentioned, migration, labor market, rental housing prices, that's like the labor slash socio like economic aspect for the population directly. And that might also have like an ethnic dimension to it. I don't want to put too much emphasis on that, but that's definitely like a personal concern of mine. I think businesses, FDIs, that part can go either, like I think businesses wise, like relocating businesses from Russia to Kazakhstan is a possibility, but overall FDIs might very much drop to the detriment of the Kazakhstani economy, but mostly because of the uncertainty. It's just too much of like too many unknowns, too many uncertainties regarding the state of the regional economy. Like both in, there's been a lot of development in the past couple of weeks on the energy situation with the pipeline sharing with Russia and the Caspian pipeline consortium. There is also the question of the Eurasian Economic Union, and there are just a lot of dimensions that are still unclear in terms of how they will play out. But there's also food security and commodity prices. So as you probably heard, there's been that Russia stopped exports of wheat and some primary like goods to like food security goods to the neighboring countries. So and in the meantime, we see an increase in food prices. So I am not sure. I think those are the dimensions to watch. I'm not sure what's going to be the extent of this effect. And I also don't want to scare anyone that the storm is coming, but generally it's like a concerning situation that I'm sure a lot of people in your audience are closely watching.
Yeah, I think that the possible more accurate outcomes will be seen in the near future, and we can see more like possible consequences and do some forecasting as time goes by. Maybe after a certain period of time, things will be more clear. And now it's more subject to speculations based on the information that we have in our hands. Thank you for sharing your opinion on these current affairs related to Central Asia and particularly to Kazakhstan. I think the opinions of yours mentioned today gave a lot of food for thought, let's say, for listeners overall on the current events. And this was our last question. And yes, I want to first of all say thank you for sharing your opinion and participating in Talking Politics. And I hope that we will see more of your achievements and more participation in situations that are related to Central Asia and Kazakhstan, of course. Well, that's it.
Yeah, I would like to just throw it out there that I am always happy to chat with you or with your club or your audience on these issues, and I'd like to encourage you to think about this, but also feel free to always. I mean, you probably know this very well, that like alumni are always happy to help with whatever they can. Talking about our experiences or our like work. I'm also pleased to see that a lot of NU alumni are now in DC. It would be just a random kind of Central Asia happy or like Eurasia happy hour that I would see people that I didn't even know at NU, because like we are separated by several years. But it's still great to know that they find opportunities to explore the topics of their interests here in DC in the like middle of the policy chatter. And of course, other places are great too. But it's I'm always open to any like any questions in it. I'd love to give back and help with in any way I can. Help the students. Yeah.
Yeah, I think many students will be very, very glad to know that they can reach out. And yeah, it's good to encourage actually students to reach out and maybe ask questions of their interest, so that a new community will be more interconnected in general, especially in spite of the pandemic, where there was a less communication in general in a new community. Okay, well, thank you a lot again, and hopefully we'll see you again at some of our other events. Okay, so I'll stop recording now.